Hello, this is Elephant in the Room. It's JJ Humphrey and Bobby Cleveland today. Had a lot of problems today on technology. We're in the Capitol. You'd think it wouldn't be a problem, but they didn't do updates to our computers. What the problem was, Bob? Can you believe that?
We're rolling now.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's
Hey,
talk about the execution, if you don't mind.
absolutely, Bob. We had that yesterday. I went down to be with the group that was there at McAllister at the prison. And again, that was the execution of Philip Hancock. And Bob, the story with Philip is that he was called over to go pick up his ex girlfriend. They had just split up, and she called him and said she needed him to pick him up, that she's in a bad place.
Now, hey, wait, let me ask you this question
Yeah,
before you go any further. Is this part about the girlfriend, is that in the original depositions and the record court minutes?
yeah, Bob, that's all in there. It's my understanding. Now, I think later it come out that she actually has now come out and said that was a setup to get him over there.
So she didn't
But
have that, wasn't in the original
that's not
court
the
procedure.
original. No. But the fact that he was called over to this house, pick her up, and anyways, he gets over there, and there's two guys, two bikers, and one of them pulls out a gun, starts showing his gun, sticks it in his waistband, tells him to get into a metal cage, a very small metal cage. And he tells him he ain't getting in the cage. Fight breaks out. The other guy starts beating him with a piece of pipe, and the two are trying to stuff him in his cage. He manages to get hold of the gun that's in the waistband and shoots both of them and kills them. And so they convict him of a double homicide and sentence him to be executed. Now, this is quite a while ago, 20 something year ago, I think. And now the facts of the case, and here's what for me is just that's where I got involved in the case. I get asked to be involved in all kinds of cases, Bob, but for me, I don't get involved. I'm involved in two cases on death penalty, and for me, this is the big kicker: was that the guy's girlfriend that got killed, she was present there. They film her when they interview her right after this murders. They interview the girlfriend, the guy's girlfriend that got murdered, and she's saying that he pulled out the gun and he was, trying to intimidate him with the gun, more or less what she's saying. I'm paraphrasing. But she said that he told him to get in that cage and that Philip gave this guy a smart ass answer. That was her word, smart ass answer. And she said she knew when he talked to him that way that it was going to get really bad. And she started trying to get out of the house. She wanted to get completely out of the house, could not get out because of small area and they were fighting. She goes in, she retreats into the to a bedroom at the door and sees all this. And she said, and she describes them fighting and everything else and the whole 9 yards. I mean, after you listen to her testimony and her recollection of the story, Bob, how do you even come out? I mean, you can't watch that video and not know it was self defense. Uh, and
Well,
here
was that video done at the time, or is that video done
they
later?
had the video. The prosecutors had the video. They've always had this video,
Okay.
and it wasn't shown to the jury. The jury foreman said if they had seen that video, they wouldn't have convicted like that. So,
Really?
yeah.
So they hid the evidence.
Well, and Bob, that's the deal. I want our listeners to know.
Is that
Go ahead.
factual?
What?
Is it factual that they hid the evidence? They didn't
Well, I mean,
present it.
they didn't show that to the jury. I don't think the defense asked for it. I think they have an obligation to show it. And here's the other deal, Bob. How are you a prosecutor? Have that in your possession, watch that, and then you seek the death penalty. How do you do that? This is death penalty so that our listeners know the death penalty is for people who premeditate. They plan out. They do it with malice,
Right.
forethought, pre-planning. They have knowingly intent to commit a heinous crime. That's who we execute. Okay, we don't execute the person who goes up to a house. Two guys start taking a pipe to him, have a gun. Now here's a big thing, kind of get in your head. Philip didn't bring the gun. Philip didn't bring the pipe. Philip didn't want to be stuffed in a cage and be killed, so he fought back. He fought back and took these two guys' lives who intended to take his. All day long, self defense, all day long. And again, that is not a
Well,
case.
how did that tape show up?
Okay, so here's what we see in a lot of these cases, Bob. And when we see, and again, here's what's funny: the attorney that originally uh, represented Philip Hancock actually went and met with the governor. I know that happened, and said that he was drinking during this time, that he did a terrible job representing him. And what happens when these cases get to the level that they're at, you see attorneys take those cases. So an attorney out of Philadelphia got this case and started putting investigators on it, found this evidence, and was able to show that evidence at the clemency hearing. So that's where I saw the evidence. And here's the deal: I looked at what evidence they had beforehand, so I'd never seen that film. But with the evidence I'd read, and I read all the stuff on it, I was like, "Hey, this is self-defense all day." I went and spoke at his clemency hearing because that's what I said. I said, "Here's the deal. Uh, if you'll remember, there was a case not very long ago, Wisconsin, where a young man, about 18, had a gun and people were chasing him through the street, and he defended himself, shot a person. His name's Rittenhouse, Kyle Rittenhouse. And again, that trial went nationwide. We all got to watch it. And again, Americans believe that you ought to have the right to defend yourself. And so
Now that girl, the girl, she's no longer alive.
no, she's alive, I believe. I mean, the witness is still alive. And again, it's on tape. They showed it at the clemency hearing, and how you can watch that and not come to conclusion. Now, I guess you can, because two of the board members voted to go ahead and execute him, but three voted not to, Bob. So again, here we have the board, actually, the pro board voted for clemency. And what we see is that the governor ignored the pro board, ignored the evidence, and went ahead and but now two people on the pro board thought, and that's what blows my mind, Bob, is I support the death penalty 1,000%. I support the death penalty 1,000%. But what I don't support is when it's misused, and that's what we're seeing here in Oklahoma. We're seeing these things be misused. This should never been allowed to go to a death penalty, an execution. It's a self-defense case.
Well, did they say that was his gun?
Do what?
Did they say that was his gun? Did that ever come up?
It's not his gun. No, everything I'm telling you is factual on the case. I mean, Philip didn't bring the gun. The gun, hey, the guy that he killed had pending charges. He was known. It came out that they've actually stuffed people in that cage, raped women out of that cage. I mean, these are not. And again, I'm not holding Philip up to be sainthood either. I mean, he's had a pretty checkered past, I think, and so again, I'm not holding him up, but it doesn't matter. This is what I wrote the governor a little text that morning, Bob, and I said, it doesn't matter. This is not about popularity or who looks good versus bad. This is about, does any person, regardless of who they are, regardless of their past, do you have the right to defend yourself? And the answer is yes, I've got the right to defend myself and should have the right to defend myself. And so, again, Bob, after looking at the case, I really wonder why we would put this guy in prison. I don't even, again, if it's truly a self-defense case, if he went over there to pick up his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, he goes over and pick her up. They get him in there. They tell him, we're gonna put you in this cage. We're gonna, and he believes that they're gonna kill him. And again, the other witness believed that they were gonna kill him and knew it was gonna go bad and knew it was gonna go so bad that they were moving out of the room because they knew it's fixing. Again, Bob, that's what we see. I mean, how do you make it not self-defense? So,
wonder what we have a parole board for if they recommend it.
Yeah, I don't know what we have a parole board for if we're going to have that recommend and then totally ignore them. I think that if you have, I believe that the governor has a tough job, and I don't want to beat up on Governor Stitt too bad. He's got a tough job. That would be a tough decision to make. But here's what I don't understand, Bob. We've got self-defense groups. We've got Second Amendment groups like OK2A. We've got our Republican Party, the GOP. These are not people who normally would. I've been up here 8 years. Bob, you've been here for quite a while. I mean, been around this stuff longer than I have. Have you ever seen a case where the conservative group, you always see the other side, the more liberal, asking for leniency, but you don't see the conservative side saying, hey, Governor, give this guy clemency. Don't execute this guy. You don't see that. I have not seen that. I don't ever remember a case seeing that. And I know that I know one of those groups put out a memo to everyone and said, hey, call the governor's office. I was told that a lot of people called the governor's office on that, Bob, I think you got one of those texts like I'm talking.
Yeah, I did. And I did call.
So, I mean, and so again, how is it that we have these? I mean, that's the governor's base. That's the group who elected him.
I don't remember the exact language when I called, but it sounded like to me that they were saying on the other side of the governor's, it was a recording that the governor would follow the parole board in a decision.
Well,
or he'll listen to it. Something they brought it up, and the way it took me was that, hey, if the parole board says that he should postpone it, that's what he'll do.
Well, I don't know what was the delay. I was up there, and they had a delay. They normally they had the execution time set at 10 o'clock. It didn't happen until 11:29, I think, 22, something like that. It's almost 11:30. And, I don't know whether the delay was that he was just struggling and trying to come up with what he's going to do.
Yeah.
That's
a tough decision that you're trying to make.
Oh,
now, if he has the same information that you've given here, and
he did,
I think maybe at least you just postpone it to get a little further review. When did all this come about? Now he's been in prison for like 20 years. Why does this all pop up now?
Yeah, that's the big problem that I've got, Bob, and that's the issue. You're kind of cutting right to the issue. Why are we waiting till 60 days? I got notified on this probably somewhere, I don't know, 90 days out, maybe roughly. So again, I got the case. I reviewed the case. I get 100 of these. I get asked all the time to look at cases, to talk about cases. Again, most of the cases I get requested to look at, I'm not getting involved in because they seem clear cut. And Bob, just for our listeners, so that one of the biggest cases that's come down probably in the last 2 years was Julius Jones.
Yeah.
And Julius Jones got so much media hype over the entire, not just our country, the world, I would say, And man, there was astronomical pressure to, you know, pardon or give clemency to Julius Jones. And I can tell you, I reviewed that case, looked at that case. I found nothing in that case that didn't convince me he was guilty. If you were kind of any part of his hearing, clemency hearing, but pretty much they didn't argue. If I remember correctly, I'd have to go back and look at that. But if I remember correctly, the argument was not whether he killed him. It was, if memory serves me right, is more about how we execute people than whether he killed people. So at the end of the day, I thought he was guilty.
So he was exonerated
He was.
because of the publicity he got.
The governor gave him clemency. And I looked at that case and said, and Bob, I think you were with me the day that the media was calling me, asking me, you know, would you execute him? And I was like, absolutely, I'd execute him. I don't see anything.
Yeah, they was trying to trick you too.
Oh, they were
trying to get you to say that you was against the death penalty.
Yeah, I mean, they were like, JJ, you would actually say, I'm like, hey, listen to me. Hell yes, I would do it. How about that? That is plain as I could get, you know. And so again, you're not talking to a guy who won't go out and say, okay, we're going to execute. I will be very clear on who I think needs to be executed or not executed. And seldom am I going to go against the jury or you know, the process. But here's the deal. When we find out that the process was corrupted, as we have in Richard Glossop's case, when we find out that the prosecutors tell the investigator, destroy 10 key pieces of evidence. Now, that evidence didn't help their case. It helped his case. It helped Richard. We're going to destroy evidence that's going to help Richard. We're going to hold back evidence that would help Richard. Now, that is criminal and it's wrong. It's criminal on the DA's part. We should be looking at prosecuting them. And that's when you're going to see me step up and go, when we have corrupt officials that corrupt our process, that's where I'm going to come in. When we find out that you had a clear-cut self-defense, and I was there before I even seen this video. I looked at the evidence. It's clear-cut. It's a self-defense. There's no way you can say that this was a premeditated. He didn't go there. He was called to come there. He didn't set them up to come. He was the one set up to come. He didn't take a gun. He didn't take a pipe. It was a mutual combat. And it's not even mutual because it's 2-on-1, and he come out the survivor, and they were trying to stuff him in a cage. How are you going to say that's a premeditated, knowingly, you know, that he went there with the intent in his heart to kill them? Again, now, if you want to say, well, I think that he should be in prison, well, we can look at that. I don't see how you reach that conclusion. I'm not asking to name a street after him. I'm not asking to have a parade for him. I'm just saying that it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a good person or whether you're a bad person, you still have the right to defend yourself. You know, if you're in prison for being a bad cat and two people come at you with a shank and gonna kill you, you've got a right to defend yourself. That's the bottom line. And I just don't see how the governor could give Julius Jones clemency and turn around and not give this guy clemency when all the facts are totally opposite. If I was going to give one clemency and execute the other, it'd be right reverse of this. You know what I'm saying? And so again, a lot of people will say, and Bob, I don't pull no punches. A lot of people say it's based on race. I'm gonna tell you something. Race factors not into me one bit. Race doesn't. It is basically we can't have a death penalty that factors in on race. What we got to have is a death penalty that factors in on the facts. We have to have a death penalty that the courts operate above, even above reproach. They have to be honest. They have to have integrity. What we're seeing is in these cases, it makes you question our process. And that's
in the prosecutor, isn't he supposed to present all of his evidence, all of it, everything?
Absolutely, Bob. They're supposed to. They cannot withhold. In Richard Glossop's case, not only did we find out that they were destroying evidence, we found out that they were calling or writing. That's how we got it. It was in writing. They actually wrote and told the witness that, hey, your testimony, now this is their whole case, their witness, your testimony does not line up with the medical examiners. Now, he's already given sworn testimony. His testimony is already on record. Your testimony doesn't line up with the medical examiners, the facts. So now we want you to change your testimony to match what, and here's what we'd like you to say. Well, that's called witness tampering. It's called perjury, subordinate perjury, all of those criminal. Okay. But
nobody got charged.
Nobody's got, hey, and this guy's still sitting in prison. And again, waiting on the U.S. Supreme Court, because the Oklahoma appellate court big time said execute him, knowing all of this, knowing that evidence was destroyed, evidence was withheld, and that perjury was committed, and that the witness tampering existed. Knowing all of that, the appellate court said still execute him. And we had a person have to recuse off the pro board. This is another problem we got, Bob. You have to get 3 of the pro board to decide.
Right. Well, here's one of the issues that we have with the pro board is that they only got, like, they give you 3 or 4 minutes in a commutation or a hearing to present your case to save a guy's life.
Right.
Because they got so many cases. I don't guess they have an attorney there that reads this stuff beforehand. They all read it. They got the pro board's not set up right.
We got a lot of problems, Bob, in the whole system, but with the pro board, absolutely. One of the things are they have 5 pro board members. Well, if one has to recuse or one's sick or one's gone, that leaves you 4. So now you got to get 3 out of 4 instead of 3 out of 5. That's not a fair process. They need to have an alternative that can step in. Actually, they should have 2 alternatives in case there is a situation where 2 people. You ought to be ready. That's why would anybody want to fight that right there? That's just good common sense. Makes common sense. But guess what? Everything you go to do to try to change the system, you're fighting. Why would anybody say, hey, we need a process where a person can recuse themselves if they have a conflict, and where we have somebody who can substitute, step right in there. Again, Bob, what you're talking about, I've spoken at 2 of these, and what you're doing, I mean, they've got you set up to where, okay, this person's going to speak. You be ready when you move right into this seat. You move right into this seat. You've got this amount of time. And I laugh. The last at Phillips' hearing, they put me at last. I'm sitting nowhere going, dadgum, I don't even know if I'm gonna have any time left to speak. I think I ended up 4 something minutes, and I had mine down to where I actually had 30 seconds left. But Bob, 4 minutes ain't a lot. That's not a lot of time to speak.
Not when you're trying to save a guy's life. Well, the deal I've been working on here now for several years, David Fleener in Dale City, back in, I think it was 92. He was asleep in his bed in his own house, and he heard a bunch of racket going on. It woke him up. He has the knife in his door for some reason to keep it. That's why he locks his bedroom door. And he's home alone. His girlfriend had gone shopping, and he went to bed. And he heard something going on. He goes in there, and there's a guy ransacking his house. They get in a fight, and he had that knife, and he knifes him twice in the back. And then his girlfriend, that guy walks out of the house, walks across the street, sits down under the street light. Then his girlfriend shows up. He says, "Hey," he said, "we need to go to the police station. I think I heard a guy. The guy broke into the house." Well, the way I understand it, there wasn't blood, all over blood everywhere. It was internal bleeding. The guy would have died, but he wouldn't have died instantly. But he would not have been paralyzed instantly, because every time he breathed, it's filling up his lungs. He could have walked several blocks, according to what we were told. So, but he was charged with premeditated murder, because they said that whenever he knifed him in the house, He then walked across the street with a knife, seen him again, and knifed him, and that was the one that killed him. And the medical examiner said that, well, if he had really knifed him twice in the house, as he says, he would have died over. Just that'd been it. So when I got that, I didn't really understand all the medical terminology until I met with Dr. McGee, who is a personal friend of mine, and I didn't even know that he was involved in this, but he has helped several people. He's a good Christian man and one of the top hearing surgeons in the nation. People come to him from all over the country to have work done. Well, so he explained it to me one day that when you knifed him, he wouldn't have paralyzed himself. Well, when David was getting ready when he was waiting for his sentence, he wrote a letter to the medical examiner and asked her, why did she say that he would have killed her right immediately? Because I knifed her in the house. Why would you say that? Well, then she says, well, sends him a letter back. She walks back what she said, and I said it wrong. But yet they wouldn't do anything about it. They had all this information, and again, they didn't say anything about it. And they have that. So when Dr. McGee looked at it, he said that person wouldn't have. Well, he sent it to one of the top medical examiners in the nation. And he didn't have any other information other than where you stabbed a person and it happened twice. He didn't know anything else. And so he was asked, is this right? And he says the same thing Dr. McGee says. No, that guy's, it's filling up his lungs. He wouldn't have paralyzed, or he wouldn't have killed him instantly. It would have took time, but he still could have walked away. They sent it to another medical examiner, come back with the same thing. So we've got that. We had it at the last commutation, but it was a complete mess on the commutation. We were supposed to do it, I think, in May. Then they said it'd be in June, and it went on. That was back in, I think, September or August 1. And it was, I think we only got 1 out of 3 votes.
And Bob, how in the world, and again, I'm sitting here listening to you, and I know I know all the facts on this case, because me and you have looked at it so much. But again, there's got to be a process to get the evidence out when we know we've messed up. And anybody believes mistakes don't happen. Mistakes happen. Hey, we're
okay, but see, we sent the medical examiner's response. We sent that to the board. They never looked at it.
That's what I'm saying.
They didn't have time. They got so many cases. They didn't really have time to review it.
No, they're
properly.
Not. We've got a system that doesn't even. And again, most of the people in that system are convinced. And Bob, I got to say, I was this way. The Richard Glossop case kind of changed my. When they got a hold of me on Richard, I was like, look, them guys have had 50,000 appeals. They had their day in court. They had opportunity to show all this. I don't need to hear it. I don't need.
Well, JJ, they told us for the commutation hearing, it was a guy the chairman of the board was he was a judge out of, I think, Ardmore. I can't think of his name, but they told us we don't want to try the case all over again. We don't want to hear all that. We want to know what he's done since he's been in prison. He's been in prison now for 26 years.
Right.
What's he done in prison? Does he have a job when he gets out? Does he have a car when he gets out? Does he have a place to live when he gets out? That's what we want to hear. So we were prepared to go through for that. And then when we started going through, they said, "Oh, we don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that. We want to hear about what got him there." They wanted to hear all about the story again. It's exactly what they told us, not that they didn't want to hear.
Right.
They went back to that. So it's very confusing. And we got messed up month after month after month.
Bob, the thing about it is you got a bunch of people from the prosecutor's office. And this is what we're seeing, whether it be the appellate court, there's a whole cabal. A lot of these people come out of the prosecutor's office. They have a prosecutor mentality. They go to the appellate court. They're convinced that they're right, and they back up their DA buddies and just about everything. And we're seeing a little change to the pro board because of some things that have happened and we've been bringing light to. But the bottom line is, where do you have an opportunity when you discover new evidence that is critical evidence that changes the entire way this case was operated, as in David Fleener. Guess
well,
what?
JJ, they went back to the judge with this information in her letter.
Right.
The judge said, well, that's too late. You should have done this whenever you in court. Yeah, but see, he had a public defender. A public defender didn't do a good job.
Well, Bob, and sometimes we just don't have the evidence right there. Somebody comes forward, something's found out. We have new DNA evidence. We have new technology. There's 1,000 reasons why that we may have new evidence that totally changes the case. We've seen people exonerated. We've seen people get out of prison. We've seen people get off death row that were 100% proven falsely put there. So we've seen that. So the fact that people can't have an open mind, I would say, like I said, I had a little closed mind, but I had enough open mind to say, okay, let me look at it. And when I started looking on yours, I can tell you when we first talked about David Fleener, I was kind of like, if I wouldn't have liked you so well, if I didn't know you so well, I probably wouldn't have looked at it. Well, guess what? I start looking at it. And I will tell you this too, Bob. Me looking at David Fleener's case meant nothing. I could not read the stuff on David Fleener's case. I'm pretty good at reading investigations. It was only until I sat down with Dr. McGee and that Dr. McGee explained verbally why.
Same thing I was in.
Yes, I mean, I don't understand all that medical stuff. When he explained how the knife went in, why it wouldn't have touched, drew it out, showed it. When he shows it, he sent it to a top medical examiner in the United States that they 100% agreed, sent it to another medical examiner. They 100% agree. All these top experts agree. Now, here's the kicker. When they go to this person who's a medical examiner who testified, she recanted, took it back, and said she was wrong. Now, when you have a person that is responsible for sending a person to life in prison, comes back and says, I made a mistake, I was wrong, and there's no way to get that in front of a court system, in front of anybody.
Well, when you go to prison, life without parole, you can't get a parole no matter how good you've done. Now, but in David Fleener's case, he's got 2 degrees, 2 paralegal degrees.
Right.
He was not a high school graduate. He graduated from school. He went to college. He's got his degree in college, and he has done more in prison than any other inmate has done under the same situation. He's raised money to help victims in prison. Right. He's raised several thousands of dollars he gives to victims who are having trouble. In the prison, he raised money with, where they get 25 cents a day or something. Right. But he did that. He's he never misses church when they have the services there. And he has done so many things since he's been incarcerated. And that's what they said they want to hear. They want to say, hey, I did do this. I did knife him.
But here's the thing, Bob. When you have a former legislator, you're a former legislator, I'm a current legislator, you have a world-renowned doctor, you have all these other people that we said in the case, and yet we are unable to even get an audience, to get anybody to consider, to look at the actual evidence that this guy was wrongfully convicted, that it was a self-defense. This is another case that I'm talking about. Hey, let's just talk to our listeners a second. You're in your home. Somebody breaks into your home. You don't know why they're there. They're in there rummaging around, going to steal from you or possibly kill you. You don't know. You get a knife, you confront the guy, and you end up stabbing him.
JJ, what they didn't say in the courtroom, that this person who broke into the house has a record of doing this before.
Yeah. Now, was that
not his first rodeo?
Is that another fact that was known at the time? I don't think that was known at the time, though, was it, Bob?
Yeah, but they didn't bring it up.
And again, that's when you get an attorney that's got 20 cases. Listen, we talk about, well, that attorney didn't do a good job. let's talk about that. If you get an indigent defense attorney, that attorney's going to have 20, 30 cases that day. Where
He
if you
just wants
got
to
the
get them
money
over
to
with.
hire, yeah, if you got money to hire, that guy's there for you. One case, he's investigating. He probably hired an investigator. Look up all this stuff. Come in. Hey, do you know this guy is got a history of breaking in houses? He broke in this house, broke in this house. Now he's breaking in this house. Okay, that matters. Okay, a fight breaks out. It's a mutual combat. Okay, he's got a right to defend himself in his home. Guess what? Under today's laws, I don't even think he could be convicted because we now have the make your day and stand your ground and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, Representative, the guy when they got in their car and was going to drive to the police station, they seen him sitting underneath a street light. He said, "Hop, there's the guy that did it." He walks over there. Well, they claim that he walked over there and he stabbed him there, but yet there was a lady who was neighbor was in her car, seen David over there talking to the person, testified he did not have a knife. David said he didn't have a knife.
Still, Bob, the reason they claim that is because that medical examiner said wherever he got stabbed is where he dropped, and he's right there, so he had to stab him out there on the street. She came back and said that's not true because these doctors said not true. So now we know it's not true that so now we know we got a witness that said he didn't have a knife. Now we know we got a medical examiner who was wrong. He didn't have to be stabbed. He could have run out. In fact, it's more likely he did run out. And we know that now we know his story is 100% legitimate. We have the medical people. We have the examiners. We have Dr. McGee. We have the witness down there. Now we know that likely his story is 100% dead on. And yet this guy is in prison, has been in prison 20 plus years because we have a medical examiner who got it wrong. And Bob,
well, now he I think he was 21 or 22 when he went in. He wasn't he didn't have a record,
right?
But now, of course, I'm sure of this. Now he wishes he never had stabbed the guy, and he has learned a lot in prison. He's done a lot of growing up. He's done everything that they want you to do when you're incarcerated, that you're going to be rehabilitated. He's completely rehabilitated with the number of years, 2 degrees.
But Bob, here's the deal. Somebody breaks in my house, they ain't gonna get stabbed. They're gonna get shot. I you know what I'm saying? You break in my house, you're rummaging around my house late, or anytime as far as that goes. You're a total stranger in my house. Guess what? I'm not going to probably ask you, hey, what you doing there, man? What's going on? I'm probably going to shoot and ask questions later. You know what I mean? Don't break into my house is what I'm going to say.
Well, it wouldn't make your
make my day.
I really don't understand why nobody looks at it, but also I know we've got a lot of people and everybody's innocent. I've heard that. You've heard it. Yeah. Guys talk about how they're innocent. We hear it all the time. And when they told me about this, he's innocent, and told me the story. I say to myself, well, if that was all true, why would they convict him of that? Are they not interested in finding the truth, or they just want to get a conviction? That's real concerning to me, because we're talking about death. But according to David Flinner, he says, there's nothing you can do more cruel than give you life without parole.
Right.
So,
but Bob, here's the thing. We've got prosecutors more worried about winning, more worried about a notch on their gun, that look at my record, look how many people I got executed, look how many cases I won. They're more worried about that, their political careers, than they are about justice, right and wrong. They took an oath to carry out justice. You want me to, I will tell you right now, they've got a new DA in Oklahoma City. Her name's Vicky. And me and Vicky are probably pretty far apart on our political, beliefs. But I will tell you this, she is a person who stands up for what she believes, and I think that she tries to do what she believes is right.
You know, it's funny you say that because I have heard a lot of good things about her,
Oh, I
and
like
she's a
her.
Democrat.
She is, but
But
I would tell you, I don't care that she's Democratic. She's right. If she believes
she's
in
doing
it,
the right. She does what's right, and yet, and I've had several people talk to me about her that knows her, and I remember when she was running for DA, uh, and it was never heard a bad thing about her. That
no, in fact,
she wants to do the right
she's
thing.
got a
So
good reputation from what I hear, and
yeah,
my dealings with her, she has been really now. Me and her's got a deal we disagree on, and she's going to stand her ground and disagree. I'm going to stand my ground and disagree, but we can disagree and still get along because we work on a couple other things, several things that
hmm
we work on. But again, that's the type of person that we should have. That's the type of person we need. I believe if somebody's done a heinous crime, uh, if they've done something that's deserving of life without parole, great. But when you have a case like this where there's questions, the guy broke into his house. There's no question. The guy broke into his house. There was a fight because the guy broke into his house. Is that a case
and
that
looking at his record, this is a ongoing thing. He's broken into several houses
yeah,
before.
and is that a case that even if you find that David Fleener was wrong in the way he took his life, is that a case that's deserving of life without parole? I mean, because hey, the guy broke in his house. So one, why are we even asking? Why would a DA ask for life without parole in that case? That's a head scratcher. But when we learn that the medical examiner and Bob, just so you know, I was working on another case the other day and found out that the medical examiner's office in Oklahoma lost their accreditation because they were the worst in the nation,
hmm
worst in the nation. And the people I was dealing with on that made that statement. I said, "Oh, come on now, they can't. How would they operate if they don't have their accreditation?" I said, "Can you verify that?" My gosh, they went to sending me boom, boom, boom. They verified it big time. So they verified that this medical examiner's office, the Oklahoma Medical Examiner, lost their accreditation. Now, Bob, here's a fascinating. It's not that we were the sorriest in 2012. And if you look in the time period of what we're talking about, David Fleener, if you look at the person we're talking about on that medical deal, there was a lot of problems with Bob Macy's office and medical examiner issues. I mean, they were lying, they were setting up stuff. They got caught red-handed at that. So I'm not making that stuff up.
No,
So,
it was a pretty big scandal
oh,
there.
it's a
Now
scandal.
here's the thing: the reason that there was the jurors were polled. 9 of the jurors said their whole opinion was based on what she said. He would have died instantly if you'd have. That's what they based their opinion on, what she said,
So
and that
nine of
opinion.
nine of the jurors said he had to die right there. So he had to stab him on the street because he would have dropped right there. Otherwise, he would have dropped in the house, and
Yeah,
that's what they convict him on. And if
yeah.
you and if you have a medical person who you have faith in says that, and again, Bob, we know it's pretty complicated because we've had medical people explain it to us. But at the end of the day, when that medical examiner says, "Oh, I got it wrong," wow, I mean, oh, the guy's done 20 something years. I got it wrong, no problem. That is horrific, and the fact that they've lost their accreditation. And here's even more shocking that I was shocked at, Bob. Guess what? They still don't have their accreditation. How is Oklahoma having these people do medical exams
And no accreditation.
and no accreditation? And that's what these DAs and that's what all these are hanging their hat on. I'm involved in a case where they said, "Hey, this kid was molested and was murdered," and then you go get the experts, the known experts in the nation, the top says it's absolutely wrong. And not only say it's absolutely wrong, but say, here's why it's wrong. Here's what's not there. Here's what you're seeing that you collected using their own evidence, going, this doesn't have vehicular damage or whatever it's called, bleeding, bruising, all of the things that are going to be involved if this happened. You're claiming this happened, and the evidence shows it didn't happen. And so again, we've got DAs just saying, well, you know, we're going to go with ours. Well, why? Because they're not accredited. They're worst in the nation. And
JJ, one thing that I believe in my heart, without a doubt, I've gone to prisons there when I was there. I had your job that you're doing now. Talked to a lot of people who were incarcerated, and the ones that I talked to, there was mostly if you're poor and you're going to get a court-appointed attorney. And I've asked them about how it went back and read some of the testimony of the trials and different things. They are not getting a fair chance, and it's very bad on. I really say that the African American was more so than others that I talked to, and it made me back then. It made me stop and think about this. Our system is really broke. That we're dealing with lives here, and seem like the other ones are wanting to deal with. They just want to put them in jail, prison, forget it, and go to the next one.
You know, you would expect though. Here's what I'd expect. Okay, I don't know how to fix the system unless you want to pour some big money in that each person gets represented and does get a good, because you're here's the deal. Let's not blame that on the indigent attorney. Everybody says, well, those indigent attorneys are really sorry. They're not really sorry. That's not true. They're not sorry. It's just that they got 30 cases where, and you may, just like any other attorney, you may have some that are better than others, but they have all of these cases. They can't represent like they're supposed to. But here's the problem is that when you have the AG's office or the DA's office, not the AG's, when you have the DA's office that has, hey Bob, you got to turn that off, son. I can't.
It's important. It's important.
Yeah, I know. You're good. But here's the deal: you expect the DA, Bob, when they got evidence like on David Flynn, when they have evidence like this Philip Hancock case, it shouldn't be. Why are they going so far after them for life in prison without parole, for the death penalty on cases that clearly don't reach that level? And then why, when you find this kind of evidence, why are they not more open to let's bring this back?
Well, is it the system in Oklahoma, or you think that's a nationwide thing, or is it our system in Oklahoma just needs some work?
I believe that it's probably nationwide, Bob. I really do believe that. And again, here's what blows my mind. Generally, your more left-leaning liberal people tend to have the conversations we're having. You know what I'm saying? They tend to be the ones, oh, there's problems, oh, this guy, all of that. And here's what's funny. Most of your law schools tend to be, and I don't think I'm making an incorrect statement, most of the attorneys that I see tend to be over here left-leaning a little bit. They're over here more on the left. How is it that you can have all of this over here, and yet what we're talking about, you're having to fight that system? That we're right, we're never wrong. We don't make mistakes. You know what? We're going to go after somebody, and that's what you see constantly.
Well, I can see one thing for their side. They're dealing with some bad people, thugs, liars, cheats. They're dealing with some bad people, and I think it just maybe reality. If you're dealing with bad people all the time, that next guy, he's guilty. He did it, because you're so stuck on all these bad things, and they got a tough job too.
Well, Bob, when people ask me, say, why, JJ, with all you know, why are you not for a moratorium on the death penalty? Why do you still support the death penalty so vocally? And you're and I said, well, let me tell you why. Do y'all remember a little incident called the Oklahoma City bombing? You remember how a guy premeditated, took diesel and fertilizer and put in a big truck, parked it right outside a building, killed 160 people, mutilated, harmed how many more? I mean, we don't even talk about, how many people were injured in that and severely for the rest of their life. And hey, we hadn't even started talking about the emotional, not just to the people and families, but man, the co-workers. I've got a friend up here at the Capitol that was a co-worker there, old Rick West. I'm gonna tell you something. Rick can't hardly even talk about that without about breaking down 20 years later. I mean, Rick's breaking down every time he talks about it. You think he's not emotionally affected by that? You think it wasn't?
Well, I think probably all of us has got some people that we know
Hey,
just
the whole
like
state
that.
of nation, our nation was struck by that. You think that guy don't need death
But
penalty?
JJ, I know a lot of DAs, and I think they're good people. I think they do one heck of a job. And so, I mean, I guess I'm just mixed. I really understand the whole.
Well,
Something must be going on here in David Flinder's case that I don't know about. But if it's there, someone should tell me, because I've not found one thing that was different, that really didn't happen that did happen on his case.
well,
And
Bob,
he has done a fabulous job. I mean, he has written, now he writes articles for Nationwide, Prison Magazine, Justice Reform Magazine. He's got several awards for his work he's done there. He's written policies in prison as the way prisoners should take and how they work with them to make it better for the inmates as well as for the officers. He's done so many good things accomplished since he's been in prison. And I would venture to say he's probably done more than any other inmate in the state of Oklahoma as far as to what he's done to help other people. He does it all the time.
Bob, and that's why I don't understand why are the DAs so hell bent on not reviewing. I understand you can't review every case, Bob. I don't know about with the stuff I've been doing, man. I get more cases, and you know this. I get cases. Would you please look into this? Prisoners, DHS, and guess what? I try to review them, and most cases don't have, even if you believe them, even if, let's say, what they say is true, do you have any evidence to support it? But occasionally you'll have a David Fleener case where the evidence is overwhelming in support, and yet you can't do anything. I've got a case, we've had them on here a month or so ago about how that, the DA, and Bob, I mean, they go to a grand jury and a grand jury doesn't indict. If they can't indict in a grand jury, wow. And they go in there to indict them and they can't indict them, but the DA files charges on them anyways, keeps them in jail 4 months, releases them for lack of evidence, rearrests them, keeps them in jail 4 months, rearrests them for lack of evidence. And now that DA is putting pressure on legislators and us saying, hey, y'all don't know what you're talking about, and we suspect them. Well, when did they lower the bar of the Constitution and lower the bar of the court to a DA suspects him? Because one guy who is a DA suspects these people ought to not get their grandkid. These people ought to spend all their money on lawyers and ruin their life because one guy suspects he can't even get the evidence up, to suspects. You can't get enough to go to trial. Okay, then guess what? Then you ain't got a case and you can't treat them as though they're guilty. But that's the attitude. Like, we are the all-knowing, we are the authorities of the state. And then, Bob, when you look at their office, I mean, hey, if we want to look at one of the big rubs I got with DA's office, they're collecting a fee that they know that they collect illegally, and they know it. The appellate court told them, you can't collect this fee. It must be used for the actual act of supervision.
And they're doing it anyway.
8 years, I call them out on it. They're collecting it to fund their office. I nail them on it. What do? They said, okay, we're going to keep collecting that, but we'll put it in this account. Now we'll put it in this account. Now we'll send it back to state, and the state will send us that money. Well, guess what? You're still collecting it illegally. You're not using it for what the state told you. You're putting it in account. Guess what that is? That's money laundering all day long. You call it what you want. It's money laundering, and it's collecting money illegally, and that's our DA's office doing that. Now, am I
Well,
asking?
my understanding is that we don't give the DAs enough to get to do the job they need to do.
Well, here's the deal. Every agency says that, Bob, and I'm
Not
not.
every agency says that.
Tell me one that don't.